Ahmet didn't want to stay home and be taken care of by the maids.
Yes, indeed.
He wanted to travel to the South, find black dudes who wanted to get paid.
Yes, indeed.
Let them play the blues, let them sing some soul, sign some white dudes from London up and play some rock and roll.
Yes, indeed.
He wanted to be the dude they call Ahmet. He's the blackest mother that I ever met.
Yes, indeed.
Darling, I love you. You know that you lie. Darling, I
Jerry Wicks in the background.
You know that you lie. You lie. You lie, 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 lie.
When you think about Atlantic Records and you think about the history of Atlantic Records, you think about gospel music, you think about soul music, you think about R&B, you think about roots music, you know what I'm saying? You think about black music.
Ahmet Ertegun expresses 50 years of American popular music. You know, he started the most important independent record label in history.
So I'll tell you a story.
Yeah, there aren't many stories that you haven't told.
Can I tell a story about you?
You're on. You're the man.
Tell a story about
Go ahead, baby.
Solomon Burke?
You told me a story once. You remember the story? Tell me that story again.
Yeah, I told them all, I think. Over and over, the same stories.
It's the way you tell them, Ahmet. It's the way you tell them.
Ahmet always began a conversation with, "Let me tell you a story." We begin our story by asking Ahmet who are some of the people he's known through the years that he would like to see again. You know, to hang out with. He said, "God, there are so many."
I've often been told that time brings about a change.
We'll meet several of Ahmet's friends, and as always with Ahmet, we'll have a good time.
2 years of being without her, 730 days. And I still remember her little brown body and this sweet little baby ways.
We'll hear great music, interesting stories. We'll drink a little, and we'll laugh a lot.
Baby, wait.
It don't get no better than that.
None of us knew that this would be the last time.
Cut the playback. Come on out here.
You know what, Ray? You're probably right. I mean, I'm sure you're right. I've never heard a sound like this before, but how the hell are we gonna market this?
We could split it up. You know, do a side A, side B type of thing. It's been done before. What the hell, right?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah, baby. That's why I love y'all, man.
All right, what the hell? It's Atlantic, right?
Atlantic.
Were you pissed off when you saw that guy?
Yeah,
Come on,
because-
you got to admit,
Yes,
he
but
wasn't up
it
to
was
snuff.
not- It did not resemble the way I was or how I dressed. I never looked like that. I didn't dress like that. However, the character was not like me.
Dun da da da, dun da da da, dun da.
Forget about how I looked.
And then you have a little drum break and go into the thing.
This fellow is portrayed as being a very shy type.
Right.
Who, you know, so that's really what's wrong. At that age, at that time, I knew exactly everything that was going on, everything that was going to sell, what wasn't going to sell, what was going. I mean, there was nobody, I don't think, in the business who knew as much as I did about what was going on.
Like the Hollywood moguls of the 30s, Ahmet possessed the confidence to follow his heart and to bet on his own taste. He had the stature in his line of work that Irving Thalberg and Louis B. Mayer had in theirs.
I was intent on starting a label, so I talked my dentist at the time, I talked him into mortgaging his house and investing $10,000. And then Herb Abramson and I started a company, Atlantic Records, and we started recording in the year 1947.
He couldn't have started the company had his father been alive. There would have been a certain amount of pressure to conform. But for a man of Ahmet's disposition, the musical heartbeat of America exerted another kind of pressure. Ahmet's life was always bigger than life itself. He was born in Istanbul in 1923, the same year the Turkish Republic was declared. His father, Mehmet Munir, was a religious Muslim who prayed 5 times a day, and yet he was aggressively anti-clerical and helped Kemal Ataturk establish the first secular republic in Turkey, thereby bringing it into the 20th century. In 1925, Mehmet was appointed as the Turkish representative to the League of Nations. In the next 20 years, he was the Turkish ambassador to Switzerland, France, England, and the United States. A life filled with dualities started almost immediately. As a child, Ahmet learned to be at home anywhere.
I grew up in Turkish embassies. We were sent to kindergarten where German and French were spoken. I played along the boulevards of Paris as a child, you know. But we lived in a Turkish atmosphere, which has not only your parents, but cousins and aunts and a lot of servants. Aside from that, there was the embassy staff, the diplomats who worked under my father, and they all had families and so forth. So we spoke Turkish at home. My father had very little interest in music. My mother, on the other hand, was a very different kind of person. She loved the good life, and she was a person who loved music. She was a wonderful singer and dancer, and she gave us a lot of music at home. We had a great love for American jazz music, which my brother Neswi, who was a few years older than me, taught me a great deal about. When I was 8 or 9 years old, he took me to hear the bands of Cab Calloway and Duke Ellington, and they made an unforgettable impression on me.
These 2 young Turkish boys fell in love with Black American music, and when their father was appointed as the Turkish ambassador to Washington, D.C., they thought they had died and gone to heaven.
I was transported. I had never been so happy in my life because I was going to the land of cowboys and Indians, gangsters, beautiful showgirls. I'd seen 42nd Street as a movie, you know, was a fabulous thing with these great girls dancing and everything. And of course, the greatest thing, the land of jazz. And then we go to Washington. And Washington, I'm sent to a private school where there's no gangsters, no cowboys, no Hollywood showgirls, no jazz, no nothing except this dreary place and these people who are much less sophisticated than we are.
Long About Midnight, a musical description of darkest Harlem.
Just take a look at Harlem after sundown, and it's time to choose. It's hard to find the people really run down. There's no time for blues.
Ahmet went looking for the jazz, for the America he and his brother had imagined. He may have dressed like the Duke of Windsor, but he dreamt of Harlem flappers and little jump bands cooking beside a southern barbecue pit.
I really hungered in those days, when I used to come to New York, hungered for the opportunity to really hear jazz in Harlem.
Couples sway, taking the pleasure they find. They don't care how they live by day, Why not leave your troubles behind?
When I came to New York, I stayed with the Consul General of Turkey. And I heard that they'd seen a particular movie. And I said, I want to see that movie. And they said, well, we've seen that movie, but we'll drop you there. We'll go see another movie that's up the street, and then we'll pick you up after the movie's over. I said, great. So they took me to this movie house. 5 minutes later, I hailed the first cab. I said, take me to Harlem. The cab driver says, where to in Harlem? I said, I didn't know where to because I thought Harlem was a place where you just go there and everybody is having fun in the streets. I said, no, you gotta know. I said, well, I wanna go, someplace where there's some real good music and everything, So it took me to a place called the Plantation Club. The band was Hot Lips Page. And he was amazed that I knew some of his songs and so forth. And he said, it's terrific. He said, what college do you go to? I was in 7th grade, So I said, I'm going to Harvard, So I said, oh, okay. So he said, well, go sit over there. Says, I'll send one of the girls to sit with you. So this beautiful chorus girl goes, we ordered some wine and so on. I mean, they did the whole show.
Well, wait a minute. What about the people that had gone to movies who had to come back to pick you up?
I'd forgotten about that. The show was fabulous. Beautiful girls, the dancing was there, and the band was fabulous. And, play jazz. And then we stayed for the second show. And then the second show's over, and this girl takes me to a rent party. And James P. Johnson is playing the piano. They got all kinds of food going back and forth, and I'm drinking scotch and sodas,
And you're in the 7th grade.
So, yes. And I had met Sidney Bechet through my brother. He was there. I mean, he said, what are you doing here? I said, well, he says, what are you drinking? I said, scotch and soda. He said, you're too young to drink. She grabs it out of my hand. He says, here, smoke this, and hands me a joint. So around 6:30, this girl said, what do you want to do? I said, I better go home. She says, don't you want to hang out? I said, no. So, boom, I grab a taxi, and apparently, the whole New York police force is looking for me. I mean, they've called my father, my mother goes out of her mind. I've disappeared. They take me with guards on the train with me. I go back. That's the only time in my life my father saw me. He gave me a slap across the face. It's the only time he ever hit me because he was so angry. Well, but it was impossible to explain to my parents or to anybody that I love jazz. So, it was all for the love of jazz. I wasn't, but I had to get there. American music, which is jazz, rhythm and blues, rock and roll, that became the music of the world. I mean, every country still have their own music. They all like their own music. But then they have Black American music and the white imitation of that Black American music.
It's interesting the perspectives that you have, coming from Turkey and having the history that you have, that you came here and you experienced kind of what American culture was like, especially in terms of the racial demarcation of music.
I remember I was 13 years old and I tried to buy records by Duke Ellington in the downtown store. Said, we don't carry those. So there was Miss Timmons, I'll never forget, there was a sales lady that took me aside and said, You go down 7th and T. He said, there's some record shops down there. You'll find those records.
In 1940, my brother and I had the first integrated jazz concerts ever given in Washington.
We broke the color line in the sense that we had mixed bands and mixed audience.
These concerts featured people like Ella Fitzgerald and Duke Ellington, who would also come to the embassy for impromptu Sunday jam sessions.
Ahmet and Nesuhi are putting on these things at the Turkish embassy, and the police are coming to the door saying, what are these black guys in here? People are complaining, and they're like dumbfounded.
If you come to me soon, until you will, I still my heart high the moon.
In Annapolis, I was going to college. I was 17 years old, and I went to hear a band in a black club in Annapolis, and they arrested me when I came out. I asked the judge, what law did I break? He said, you broke the Jim Crow law. I said, is that written down anywhere? He said, no, but everybody understands that. He looked at my name and says, I guess you're a foreigner, that you don't understand what our laws are. I said, I don't consider that a law because it's not written anywhere. And
10 years in jail.
Ahmet Ertegun had represented Turkey in Britain, Switzerland, France, and the United States. His passing deprives the international scene of a valued counselor.
His father died in 1944 when Ahmet was 20 years old.
Ahmet left Georgetown Law School. He had a burning desire, and his older brother said, you know, you can graduate, you can go back and become the foreign minister of Turkey, but is that what you want? He said, no, I want to follow my heart. I want to go and I want to make records, and gospel records and jazz records and blues records and black records is what he was doing. And as we said, well, then follow your heart, and that's what he did.
Ahmet and Herb Abramson arrived in New York City and opened the doors to Atlantic Records in 1947, intent on making records for the black audience. But first they had to find people who could sing them.
And it's raining, teardrops from my eyes. Well, if you see clouds.
Artists like Ruth Brown had been recording for a mass audience, which meant white music. Ahmet said, Ruth, you'll never sell records sounding like Doris Day. At his insistence, she returned to her musical roots, becoming the first Atlantic artist who consistently reached the top 10 in the R&B charts.
I knew that we knew the music better than our competitors. We understood what made people buy records, and we loved that music.
Everything the cloud would disappear. I'd rather smile if you were here. So, baby, won't you hurry? 'Cause I'll miss you so. And it's raining, teardrops from my eyes.
We were a three-person company. Herb Abramson and I did virtually all the recording work, the A&R work, promotion and publicity and all of that. Miriam Abramson was the office manager. She was in charge of everything that did not directly involve music.
Little mama, I told your good friend, told your sister Mary too. Little mama, I told your good friend, told your sister Mary too. That all I ever wanted was to get your gold from you. Little mama, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry.
Of course, you wrote songs for the Clovers.
I wrote a lot of songs for the Clovers. I first heard them in Washington, in the back room of the Quality Music Shop that was owned by Max Silverman, whom we called Waxy Maxie, who was my old friend, and in whose store I learned so much about rhythm and blues music. But anyway, I heard the Clovers. They were a wonderful singing group. I mean, they were really superior to what most of the doo-wop groups that were going around in those days. And not only were they superior, but they were much more sophisticated.
You've become my heart disease. Listen to me, baby, please. You got me just mad for you. Please don't drive me crazy too. Hey now, Miss Fanny. Hey now, please be mine.
We had to find some R&B material and put them into a funky groove.
What your mama say? We'll have a good time anyway. Hey now.
So that's why I started to write songs for them, you know, because you couldn't just go to a music publisher and find material. They didn't have any songs for them, so we had to make up those songs.
I was just thinking how you wrote this stuff. A few years ago, you were in Geneva, and I was doing the big band thing, and I remember Minnie the Mooch. And he was going this like this on the floor, and I was like, and it was in a hotel, and I thought, if anybody's underneath, they're going to see the lights going like this. I wondered if that's the way you kind of wrote the stuff. Or did you write these songs on a piano? Or did you
on a piano, my God, man. The piano was a piece of attractive furniture, as far as I'm concerned. I didn't find out it was an instrument till much later. So I never thought I could write. It never occurred to me until some of the terrific black songwriters that we had. We had 2 or 3 guys who really came up and, you know, who were not musicians. And they would come up and clap hands and say, "Mama, you treat your daughter mean. Yap, yap, yap. Mama, you treat your daughter." I said, "Well, shit, man, I can do that too." You know what I mean?
That I was too far for you.
Ahmet's pen name was Nugetri, Ertegun, spelled backwards.
Well, why did you do that?
In the very early days of Atlantic, I really thought of this thing as a passing thing. I mean, you know, I was still going to college. I started this label. But I thought that eventually I'd become a civil servant in Turkey, like my father and grandfather and so on. And I thought, well, if I ever got involved in politics, maybe it wouldn't be good for me if somebody found out I'd written a song called "I Want to Rock You All Night" or something like that.
Oh, that was the reason then, okay. Okay, well,
So
there
I
you
thought,
go.
well, I'll spell it backwards and nobody will know who it was.
We're gonna reel, gonna roll, gonna dance, drink, have some more. What you gonna do? About 9 o'clock. About 9 o'clock.
Ahmet found that he was in a position to make a more potent black music than was available at the time in the marketplace.
I could play with Tom, Dick, and Harry.
He acted as a broker at one important moment in the history of American pop culture.
You're the only one. Chains of love.
Big Joe Turner was a great, wonderful man. If he'd had some musical training, he would have been probably a great opera star because he had such a big voice. The Basie band used to play, and Joe Turner sang without a microphone.
Unbelievable.
And it's just boom, so voice just a boom over it. But he could sing, my God, did he sing the blues.
Well, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Baby, and the moon is shining bright. Well, 3 o'clock in the morning. Baby, and the moon is shining bright. Well, I wonder
series of hits with Joe. Jesse Stone wrote Shake, Rattle, and Roll, which became like an anthem for the beginning of rock and roll. We used to do everything, you know. We're making a record. If we thought there should be 3 people singing back up there, we didn't have 3 singers standing there, so.
To fortify the chorus, every time it came to the hook line, Shake, Rattle, and Roll, Ahmet and Jesse Stone and I got out there behind Joe Turner, and we sang Shake, Rattle, and Roll. And somehow we managed to do it in tune, so it's not egregious when you listen to it.
I said shake, rattle, and roll. Shake, rattle, and roll. Shake, rattle, and roll. Shake, rattle, and roll.
While young men like to have a good time.
In 1953, Jerry Wexler joined Atlantic Records after Herb Abramson was drafted into the Army.
Miriam and I decided to try to get Jerry Wexler, who was a close friend of all of ours, jazz record collector, and who was probably the most prominent music critic at Billboard magazine.
Ahmet chose staff for Atlantic the same way he chose artists. He listened, he trusted his gut, and he showed unerring good judgment.
I became one of the co-owners of Atlantic Records. Whatever motivated them, I have no idea, because I had no visible qualifications except the talent for hanging out.
And Ahmet used to say, we used to have so much fun, I thought we were going to laugh our way out of the record business.
I need it when the moon is bright. I need it when you hold me tight. I need it in the middle of the night. I need your honey love.
Ahmet and I shared the major office, which was the largest room up there, and which became the recording room. When a session came along, we would move the desks to the wall, put one desk on top of the other, and Tom Dowd, our loving and belated wonderful engineer, would set up folding chairs and a microphone, and maybe put a mic out in the stairwell for echo.
When your baby leaves you all alone.
You had Tommy Dow, who was the engineer, who was incredibly a genius. Not just moving the dials, but who could say, do that little part again, that do that hum again. You know, and you know, Jerry would say, what is that for? What is this? And whenever Jerry couldn't agree with Tommy, and Arif would come in and all be there, and then all of a sudden nobody could agree, and I would say, what's the problem, babe? What's the problem? And do it the way Tommy did it. And then Jerry said, that's the way we should have done it. I told you that's the way we should have done it.
If you need me, call me. I said if you need me, all you gotta do is call me. Don't wait too long and let everything in your life go wrong. If you need me, darling, call my number, and I'll bring my big fine self on home to you, baby. Listen.
I was in front of the building where our office was. I ran to Dave Brubeck, and he said, what's happening, what's new? I said, you want to hear something new? It was like 6 o'clock at night or 7. Nobody was in the office. So I went up, unlocked the door, took him in my office, and I played him some Ray Charles, you know, piano doodlings and so forth, you know. He said, my God, that is fabulous player, fabulous player. Who is that? I said, that's Ray Charles. He said, I never heard of him, you know. In those days, you know.
A white person would hear Ray Charles in France before he'd hear it in America.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Ray Charles, chanteur, pianiste et compositeur, the soulful Mr. Ray Charles.
That'll love me both day and night. Never grumbles or fusses. Always treats me right. Never running streaks and leaving me alone. She knows a woman's place right there now in her home. Got a woman and what's good to me. It's like that.
permanent.
You know what? There's certain grooves that they never leave you. I mean, they sound so good. And the subtler you play them, the better they sound.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh my gosh. I first met Ray Charles after I'd heard his records on Swing Time.
Yes.
Which killed me. And I thought, well, this is the best I have ever heard. I said, oh my God, how come we can't get an artist like this? And I was talking to Billy Shaw. Remember Billy Shaw?
Oh, yes, of course.
I was talking to Billy Shaw about how this is the greatest artist. He says, well, you know, we really can't book him because the records are, I said, those records are not selling.
Yeah.
That's not possible. So anyway, he said, do you want Ray Charles? I said, I would give anything for Ray Charles. So he arranged for us to buy your contract.
Yeah.
That was the greatest day. I mean, I just looked at my partner. I said, well, now we got a great singer. Finally.
Bless your heart.
Ahmet, it's just like Charles Brown.
You left me.
Okay.
Yes, you left
I'll talk to him.
Fellas, band can take 5.
All right, cats.
You either sound original or you got nothing.
Ahmet, what'd you think of that?
Ray, I want to tell you something, and I don't want you to take it wrong.
Then give it to me right then.
I signed you because I sensed something special in you, not because you sound like Nat Cole or Charles Brown.
Ahmet, this is what I do, man. I gotta make a living. This is what the people want. I don't know no other way.
Well, we got to help you find one.
When he first started making sessions, I was foolish enough to think that I could write a song for him that he would like, and that's, you know, we were messing around trying to figure out how to make a hit and this and that.
And
We
that's how you get that title.
The Mess Around.
The Mess Around. Cute title. Who wrote it?
I did.
Ah, you wrote it.
Yeah.
Well, sing it to me, man.
Sing it?
Yeah. It ain't like I could read the lyrics.
Okay. Well, it's key of G. Yeah, but it's a kind of Pete Johnson thing.
Pete Johnson.
Yeah, that's it.
You like that? Okay,
Yeah.
here we go. 2, 3.
Well, all get juice, you can bet your soul, but they all do the rock with a steady roll, and they mess around. Well, they mess around. Hold their baby and they do the mess around. Play that thing.
This band's gonna play from 9 to 1. Everybody is gonna have some fun doing the mess around. It's something like that.
There are certain songs like Cowcow Blues that hit very big. Songs like Pine Tops Boogie. I thought, well, I'd take some elements of those songs, and out comes lyrics like, when I say stop, don't, when I say go, just shake your leg and do the mess around. Well, that's from Pine Tops Boogie.
When I say stop, don't move a peg. When I say get it, everybody mess around.
When I say stop, don't you move a peg. When I say go, just shake your leg and do the mess around. I declare, do the mess around. Now you see that girl with that diamond ring. She knows how to shake that thing, mess around.
Now, mess around became what I say.
You see the girl with the diamond ring? She knows how to shake that
A lot of the lyrics in Mess Around became what I say. So this is going from Cowcow Davenport to me and to Ray Charles, and then what I say is something that he devised with those things in his subconscious memory.
What I Say was his first million seller, and it was a watershed. Now the screaming fans included the white audience.
But you know, Ahmet, what was really great with our relationship was you guys never, ever bothered me about my music.
Well,
you
we
would just
love
say,
you.
I think the world should know that. I mean, I was fortunate. I was blessed that you guys allowed me to just be myself. All I want to do is play that music, and you guys allowed me to do that, man. Yeah. I mean, that was never any hindrance.
Yeah,
nothing in my way. You guys were record people. You know what I mean? The record companies were not record. They can't tap their feet till March.
Oh, my.
Went to see my sweetheart last night around about 10. She said, hold me, sweet papa, squeeze me every now and then. I keep rolling with my baby.
I was living on a farm, you know, and I came here and then I saw this man who's crazy compared to what I had, you know, before.
'Cause she's sweet that way.
I left Romania in '47 in a very comfortable way because I left on the train that the royal family left because I had relatives who were connected. Then I stayed with them in Switzerland for about 2 years. I went to a sewing school because I thought I had to do something. None of us had money out. And then I went to Paris for a while, and then I got married, and with my ex-husband, we bought a farm in Canada. We had girls who were cleaning eggs, and they were gyrating at the music that I'd never heard and never understood, Presley's records. And I thought, oh my God, this whole group is so degenerated. Little I know, that's how my life ended. I was in that group.
'Cause trying is no sin, but I was too far.
We met in New York because my father was a great friend of the Turkish ambassador. So I stayed with the Turkish ambassador, and that's how I met Ahmet. I wasn't looking for a husband, by the way. I was married. So at least, I wasn't anxious to get married. I was upset to get divorced. I did it, and then I was plunged into a world I didn't know.
When I was just a little girl with long and silky curls, my mama told me, honey, you've got more than other girls.
I certainly didn't want to marry a Turk in my life because Romania was under Turkish domination for 200 years. My mother wrote and said it took us 200 years to get rid of a Turk, and now we have one in the family.
Ahmet had always been close to his brother Nesui, whom he considered his mentor. It wasn't surprising that when Nesui announced that he was going to work for a rival label in L.A., Ahmet persuaded him to come back to Atlantic instead, to head up the jazz division.
I started to work for Atlantic on the 1st of January of 1955. And I did not just jazz, but everything that was outside really of the R&B and soul music of the day.
The greatest record he produced, combining jazz with R&B, was Ray Charles' Swan Song for Atlantic Records.
I said let the good time roll.
The genius of Ray Charles' album, where we had the Ray Charles band playing along with the Quincy Jones arrangements of the Count Basie and Duke Ellington bands. We'd put an enormous group of bands together and had them all playing simultaneously.
Hey, everybody, let's have some fun. You only live but once, and when you're dead, you're done. Let the good time roll, baby. I mean the good time now. Am I blue?
Unfortunately, Charles left for a more lucrative contract with ABC Records. Atlantic had lost their star.
And we're through. Three cool cats.
No cash, no artists, no airtime. To survive, they had to make an unsentimental move.
It was always a big hassle to get our records played. We used to run from here to there. We weren't particularly, none of us were how should I put it? You know, we were more fans than we were people who knew how to bribe people. And then along came John.
Hello, everybody. How y'all tonight? This is Alan Freed, the old king of the Moondoggers, and it's time again.
DJs controlled the airwaves. If you wanted your records played, they had to be paid.
In order to get our records on the air, we had to pay him a stipend every month. And I remember it was $600 in cash. And I used to bring it in a paper bag to his bag man to a cloakroom on the second floor of 1619 Broadway.
And I'll make sure I get all my payments in right on time.
It was standard practice in the industry, which became known as payola.
There was a point where our financial fortunes were at an ebb.
Their R&B roster was looking thin. Sales were in decline. They hadn't changed with the times. They needed new blood.
We cut down our take-home, and finally we cut it to nothing. We were taking home nothing a week. It was really bad. So I said, Alan, we can't pay you. I said, you got to carry us for a while. And he said, we'll be back. He wrote me a letter from Cleveland. I wish I had it to this day, where he said, I'd sure like to help you out, Jerry, but to do that would be taking the bread out of my children's mouth. So he cut us off.
He's gonna get caught, just you wait and see.
Why is everybody always picking on me?
In 1959, Congress opened an investigation into the practice of payola.
I just can't say I'm under subpoena here.
Alan Freed, a chief target, was fired and eventually pleaded guilty to accepting bribes.
We did break out of it with the Coasters, Charlie Brown.
Who calls the English teacher daddy-o?
Ahmet and Jerry have been scrambling, looking for ways to save the company.
We have the great fortune of becoming associated with Jerry Lieber and Mike Stoller, who made the now historic Coasters sessions.
We knew the king of the Turkish Empire was in the rhythm and blues business, and I used to say to him, man, he could have been the ambassador to England. What's he doing in this funky gutter, drinking slow gin and talking all that trash?
Yes, well, it was more fun.
It was more fun.
Yes, it was.
It always is.
Jerry Lieber and Mike Stoller were prolific West Coast songwriters. Atlantic lured them to New York by giving them the first independent production deal in the music business.
Take out the papers and the trash.
From their new offices in the Brill Building, they wrote songs that captured the sitcoms of the city and the teenage years. They went on to write over 270 songs with 150 chart hits.
More than anybody, I think Jerry and Mike were responsible for the great growth of Atlantic Records. They were responsible for more innovation, more hits. They really are probably just as important as anybody else in the history of our company.
I've been telling that to people for years.
I know, but it's true.
With professional songwriters now contributing to Atlantic's success, Ahmet was free to indulge in other interests.
Don't hold back. He took a vacation then. Decided not to write anymore. You know what I mean? And before you know it, they're really turning out great records. And as Ahmet being Ahmet, he would never interfere. When you're on a roll, he would keep that going. To be very honest with you, I thought this was the worst. I said, this record will not hit. This had nothing to do with R&B. It was totally out of the way of all the things I'd recorded.
Exactly how I thought.
I said, this record will not make it. I just said, well, I'm out of the church now, and this is not what I know that people will buy from me.
But you sang it with a lot of conviction. You felt it.
I was sober that day, I mean.
It was the first time I ever put strings, really, on a rhythm and blues record or a rock record. Never had strings on.
Yeah.
I read a very funny piece where they talked about two Jews putting strings on a Mexican-style black record or something. So, with this, like, because I had these beats, you know, which were these kind of little Latin beats, no? A lot of that.
Jerry Wexler said, the strings were an abomination then, and an abomination now.
Each time we recorded the Drifters, the string section got larger, and there was at least one or two more percussion players on it, all going boom, 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 boom.
That's what gave Phil the heart to put all that shit in the studio.
I know.
He was with us then, you know.
Yes. He came.
He was our apprentice.
That's how I met Phil Spector.
Oh, that's right.
Boy genius Phil Spector was the first in a long line of Ahmet's bright young assistants. Creator of the Wall of Sound, Spector became the most famous and infamous rock and roll producer of the 60s.
We didn't know he was that talented. I would have been a
That's
manager. Forget the second of you.
That's right.
Yeah.
All the time he was with me, what we did was have a terrific time. I mean, we had great times. We didn't do much work. I think he worked with me on one or two Bobby Darin sessions.
Splish splash, I was taking a bath. Long about a Saturday night. Yeah. A rub double, just relaxing in the tub. Thinking everything was alright.
Herb Abramson brought in 4 masters by a singer named Bobby Darin.
When Herb Abramson returns from the Army, the dynamics change. Wexler has physically and psychically taken over his role at the company. Abramson struggles to find his place.
Bobby Darin used to come up to see what's happening, what's going on, and so on with his record. And since Herb was keeping him waiting, he would be in the waiting room, which was next to my office, where there was a piano. And he would sit at the piano and play all these different ideas he had. And I thought, my God, this kid is terrific. So after the 2 records flopped, Herb Abramson said, I'm giving Bobby Darin a release from his contract. I said, no, please, not. We're not going to release him from the contract. I said, oh, no, I told him we'd release him. He said, under no circumstance. I produced all his records, and Splish Splash was an immediate smash.
Ahmet is able to reinvent himself at every turn. After the success of Lieber and Stoller, he jumps right into the pop music scene with Bobby Darin's Splish Splash. Darin becomes a teen idol, and Atlantic has its first hit by a white artist. It's a wake-up call for Ahmet. Others in the company aren't convinced. For Herb Abramson, it's the last straw. He asks to be bought out.
Can someone sneaking round the corner? Could that someone be Mac the Knife?
The minute I heard the arrangement go down, I said, this is magic. I mean, it bubbles. You know, the arrangement bubbles. It's so swingy. It's just so much in the pocket.
On the right, babe, not that Maggie. Back in town.
Sales were huge. With Bobby Darin's success, Atlantic stops being solely an R&B label.
Back is back.
But Jerry persists with the black music he loves. When he receives a call from the local distributor in Memphis saying, here's a record you might be interested in, he heads south.
So I went to Memphis, met Jim Stewart, who owned Stax Records, but more importantly, in acquiring the record, we effected a contract that we would continue to press and distribute Stax Records on a national basis if they reached this dimension. And many of them did, because the producers were so brilliant. People like Booker T and the MGs.
It was the beginning of a beautiful relationship and the start of the next great period of growth and creativity in the history of Atlantic Records.
These musicians would come to work, Duck Dunn bass, Steve Cropper guitar, Al Jackson drums, and Booker T keyboards. we'd begin playing some kind of music. Sometimes it would be a little lick that they had heard, and they embroidered it and developed it, and the next thing you know, there's give and take, and there's an interaction, and gradually this thing takes place. You'd have a finished record with an arrangement, and it was just as much an arrangement as anything that Henry Mancini ever did. Because the arrangement is not the notes on paper or on the staff. The arrangement is the totality of the music.
I know she's waiting, just anticipating for things that she'll never, never, never possess. No, no. But while she's there waiting, try just a little bit of tenderness. That's all you got to do.
Otis Redding was a huge presence on the stage, and it was irresistible.
A little bit.
I don't think we'll ever see anybody like Otis Redding again.
Agreed and yeah. But the soft words, they are spoke so gentle, yeah. And it makes it easier to bear. Oh, she won't regret it, no. Young girls, they don't forget it. Love is their whole happiness, yeah. But it's all so easy. All you got to do is try a little tenderness, yeah, man. All you got to do, and everybody just got to get on up, get on up, get on up, get on up, just get on up. I got your ass. Try a little tenderness, a little tenderness, a little tenderness, a little tenderness. You got to hold up.
Ahmet went to Europe to book concerts for the up-and-coming Stax artists through his old friend Bruno Cocatrix, the impresario of the Olympia, the famous Parisian music hall.
We had artists who made a big splash in Paris.
Yeah.
Some of the Stax artists,
Yeah.
Otis Redding, Wilson Pickett, and Solomon Burke, and some of those artists.
I went to see most of those shows you just mentioned, the Otis Redding, Wilson Pickett, Stax Review with Steve Cropper and Booker T, all that. Oh, it's absolutely amazing.
The Atlantic Company was very known in France, and all the artists of the Atlantic Company was models for the French artists.
I remember on our first date, he kissed me and he walked away. I was only 17, and I never dreamed that he could be so mean. He told me now, I love you, but let me leave you with Eli. Yes, indeed, I tell you that he lied. Oh, yes, he did. You know that he lied. He lied. He lied. Yes, he did.
Jerry Wexler called me up and told me we had a good chance to sign up Aretha Franklin. I said, Aretha Franklin? Now, you didn't have huge hits at Columbia.
No.
But you had a wonderful career there.
I did.
You made some great
I did.
records
Thank
there.
you.
Great records are not always great hits, but there were great records.
Columbia never was sure what they wanted from Aretha. They didn't know whether they wanted it to be Judy Garland or Edith Piaf or Ella Fitzgerald. They tried everything, and they made a lot of damn good records with it, but they didn't have her essence.
At Columbia, at the time, Goddard Lieberson was the president, and to me, he was just a name sitting somewhere in a big office. I never even met him, I don't think.
Yes.
But when I got to Atlantic, you and Jerry would come down to the studios, you would roll your sleeves up, we would get in there and laugh. I just remember we had a romping, stomping good
Well, we had
time.
a great time. Jerry and Arif and Tommy made some incredible records with me.
Absolutely.
And when they played me those records, I said, my God, we now have the greatest records of this genre ever made.
Tom Dowd had been Atlantic's engineer since 1947. Fellow Turkish emigre Arif Mardin joined the company in 1963 as Nesui's assistant and quickly moved on to arranging. Eventually, he became a major producer who helped establish the Atlantic sound.
We knew what to do with Aretha because we had been doing it with Laverne Baker and Ruth Brown and other singers, which was rhythm and blues.
Jerry is a great producer. He hit the height of his career with those first records that he made with Arif and with Tommy. Those first records he made with Aretha Franklin.
I'd like to point out that Atlantic Records is the only major record company for which the owners actually made records, were line producers in the studio making records.
We had a great concert.
Yes.
In the Hammersmith Odeon.
Hammersmith Odeon, and
Right.
you brought Mick Jagger out that
listen,
night.
you know
Mick
what?
came out that night.
You know who was out there? The first 20 rows were all the biggest rock and roll stars of England. Everybody was there. The Beatles, the Stones, and they'd all
I had
come
no
out.
idea.
And they
No
all went down.
idea.
Oh my God, it was like, well, the Queen had arrived.
It wasn't called Atlantic for nothing. Black American music had sparked a musical revolution across the sea. Ahmet checked into Hotel Britannia for a fresh injection of talent. This trip would determine the future of Atlantic Records.
I happened to be in London at the Scotch Club where we were giving a party for Wilson Pickett. And my back was to the bandstand, and I heard this really incredible blues guitar player. And I was talking to Wilson. I figured, well, the only person who'd be playing this is this guitar player who was a Southern boy. I said, Wilson, I said, your guitar player is sensational. He said, my guitar player, he said, is having a drink at the bar. And I looked over, and he was at the bar. So I turned back, and here was this young man with an angelic face, very intent upon his playing, and playing blues like B.B. King would play. And I thought, my God, I have never in my life heard anything like this.
I just heard him, and I told Robert Stigwood, I said, that's the man, that's the music what, you know, what Robert Stigwood had been sending me, had been kind of Australian music hall music.
Cream, managed by Robert Stigwood, shared all of Ahmet's interests and aesthetics. They were the first Atlantic group that brought the British wave of blues-oriented rock and roll to America. Once again, Atlantic Records was transformed.
With the advent of The Who, the Rolling Stones, and of course the Beatles, and their great success in America, I became very aware that we had to get involved in that aspect. I liked very much the fact that here were these young English musicians who had been brought up on the blues, on original American black music, and who loved the blues, understood it, and could sing it and play it.
Since Ahmet really knew the blues and sympathetic to it, what he did do in England was sign blues artists. You know, Eric Clapton, Jimmy Page, and it was that shared love of American music that really got him substantial entree.
You came to New York.
I was at Atlantic Studios.
And we were in the studio.
And just being in that incredible studio and you being there. The most remarkable day was when you convinced me to come and see Aretha and that band playing.
I remember that.
Oh my God. And you told me to go out there and play, and you had like all kinds of guitar. It was like 5 guitar players on that session. And you took them all out and put me in there.
Some of the greatest sessions of all time happened
Remember,
right
I
there.
brought Eric Clapton
Yes.
when he was in his psychedelic era.
And I had like perm
You
hair.
and you had all that stuff. Aretha Franklin started to laugh. I said, "You're not going to laugh when she started to play."
Yeah, no, Eric Clapton is one of the greats.
Yeah, he was
one of the greats.
When I first met Eric, he had listened to just about every blues that ever been recorded. He knew all of them. I mean, they really were into the best, you know, the best blues and revived it. When you heard the black music on the radio, it got you.
Yeah.
It not only got you, but you went into more depth of study. And it wasn't a study for you, that was fun.
It's
But-
an obsession for me.
That's right.
Yeah, I love it so much.
So when you heard it, you became part of it. I mean, it became part of you.
We all were basing most of our skills on American musicians. And I was listening to your man, Ray Charles.
It was kind of like a secret, you know, I mean, that you were into this stuff and that you could even figure out how to play it, and you really want to play it so bad.
When I heard the music of that time, it was coming out of the speaker, but you know, it seduced me. It came out and grabbed me by the throat and pulled me in. And as a kid, the first black records that I started to hear were as a result of the fact, and this is the same with the 3 guitarists, myself, Eric and Jeff. We all had friends who were very serious record collectors. And I had a friend who used to get the records in of Atlantic.
I guess I first became aware of Atlantic Records by going into the record store buying. They had this funny series in France which they used to sell in England. It was a collection, a sample. We used to always laugh at the title because it was called Rhythm and Blues Formidable. That was the title of this. But it was actually a really good series because it was Atlantic and a big Atlantic logo, and it was called Rhythm and Blues Formidable, and it had a sampler of all the different artists on it.
The reality was that all of these great artists, like the members of Led Zeppelin, wanted to be with Atlantic. They really, if they had a choice, they wanted to be with the guy that recorded Otis Redding and Big Joe Turner and Aretha Franklin. They wanted to be where what they saw was the home of the music that they adored. And Atlantic really was that label.
When Ahmet would come to London, he would often ring me, you know, and I remember seeing you a lot in London.
The major great music was coming from England as I was signing a lot of bands, many of whom through you. We became known as the American label that knew how to work British acts, especially after the tremendous success.
I've got the cocaine for you.
Just get away with certain things. I'll give you a good example with the fourth album, because by that time we were getting so much bad press over here, and you know, they were saying it's a hype and it's this and it's that, because they didn't understand for one moment what we were doing, and so the reviews were crap. And so by the time it came to the fourth album, we said, right, okay, this is what's going to happen here. We'll put out an album with no name of the band on it, no nothing, and just say, here you are, take it or leave. Well, of course, it was the biggest album we had up to that point. But, you know, it could have just been one of those things that was drawn out. No, the name's got to be on there. No, but in the end, you just went, okay, let's give it a shot. And it was brilliant. You know, thank you for that. It was good.
From France, and they'd written a book called La Route de Blues, The Road of the Blues. And they wanted me to write an introduction, a foreword. And these guys were young guys, and they were talking about old blues, you know. I said, how'd you all learn about the blues? So I said, oh.
She was yet to be born. So the other day, she was watching the DVD and listening to Achilles' Last Stand from that album, Presence. She said, honey, I love you, but I don't want to be left in a room alone with that music. I mean, that's a fantastic line. I love you, but I don't want to be left alone in a room with that music.
And the other was on the west coast of the United States.
These battle lines being drawn. Nobody's right if everybody's wrong. Young people speaking their minds, getting so much resistance from behind. We got stop, children, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down.
I went to California. I was able to get Buffalo Springfield, the precursors of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young.
Paranoia strikes deep.
I became more concentrated on developing rock and roll acts, like that started with the Buffalo Springfield and ended more or less with the Rolling Stones.
Jerry, on the other hand, stayed true to himself, never surrendering his passion for the music he knew and loved. Though he continued to make hit records with Aretha, the roots genres had slowed to a crawl.
Thrill is gone. The thrill is gone away.
You know, Jerry Wexler was kind of a purist about black music. As a matter of fact, he once threw Crosby, Stills, and Nash out of his office saying, You know, you're a bunch of imitators. And I said, what are you doing? I just signed this group. It really went against the grain. He liked some white music, but
Not
more
really.
like country, you
Yeah.
know, and so
Yeah.
on. But look, I mean, Jerry was very much true to what he liked. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of people thought of him as being a commercial kind of guy, but his true love was blues and jazz and so on. And he didn't quite understand the importance of this new music.
It's getting to the point where I'm no fun anymore. I'm sorry. Sometimes it hurts so badly I must cry out loud. I'm lonely. I am yours. You are mine. You are what you are. You make it hard.
Do you remember what happened at Woodstock? I was bringing Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young and Joni Mitchell to Woodstock, and I arrived at LaGuardia Airport, and I picked up the New York Times, and it says 400,000 people sitting in mud. And I thought, no way am I going to Woodstock. And so they went on to Woodstock, and Joni and I went back to my apartment on Central Park South, and we watched it on television, and she wrote the song Woodstock in my apartment on 59th Street.
But it was a great happening for rock and roll. I originally bought that because I thought a lot of our artists were going to be on it. But as it turned out, Crosby, Stills, and Nash were the only artists we had, but they all wanted to be on the record. So we got permission from all the companies to use their artists.
Yeah, I remember.
Paul Marshall, who did the deal, sold me the rights for $75,000, the right to record the concert. But before the thing, he said, I would like to sell you the movie rights for $25,000. And I said, what am I going to do with the movie rights of a rock and roll concert? Who's interested in the movie rights? So he said, oh, come on. I said, and he couldn't sell it anywhere else. So finally, I agreed to give him $100,000 instead of $75,000, and it includes the movie rights. And you want to know, when I sold my company to Warner Brothers, I'd forgotten all about the movie rights. And when the Woodstock movie was made, I had the rights to it. That's how Warner Brothers got that movie. And
The rights to the album and the movie were worth more than you got for Atlantic Records.
Exactly. What they paid me for Atlantic Records was
less than they made on the movie and the record.
You make it hard.
Ahmet, ever confident, never worried about the future. The same could not be said about Jerry, who worried about everything. In 1967, against his own better judgment, Ahmet went along with the decision to sell Atlantic Records to Warner Brothers 7 Arts for stock worth just $17 million.
It was a huge mistake, basically my fault. I saw all these independent records around us crumbling. There were so many independent records like us, peers, back in the day, dozens, maybe 100 or more. Every one of them is gone. Not a one has survived. I saw this happening, and I said, I think maybe we can bail if somebody wants to buy us.
There are a lot of stories about me falling asleep. I fell asleep many times. One of the times was when Mick was telling me that the group had decided they want to record for Atlantic. As he was telling me that, I dozed off because, you know, when I hear very loud music, if I'm tired, it makes me kind of doze off. They carried me out of that club.
That's one of the reasons that Mick wanted to sign with Atlantic. He said, man, we've got to be with this guy.
Yeah. Well, he hates pushy people.
Had the zipper. That was the first time I had a tongue on it.
Andy Warhol made that.
Andy Warhol did the cover.
The cover. And the first 50,000 came back because they were all warped, because the zipper warped
You
all
have to
the...
stack them. They have to be stacked. And they're very expensive to make. Everyone wanted to outdo everyone by making these more expensive, you know, you'd have these great ideas, but they'd always be expensive. And then you'd always want the record companies to pay for it all.
When you think about it, you know, it was a great period for the band.
That was a good period.
I mean, when you think of some of the incredible music that was made while we were having a great time.
No, we were having a great time when we did. Like, we did that Exxon on Main Street album. It was a really interesting movie, but unshowable to family audiences,
That's right.
or indeed any audience at the time. Now it's pretty tame, but in those days, a movie about, you know, being on the road and heroin users and do the show of me shooting up, you know, it's like, this is great cinema, you know.
We didn't want to go into everything else that was going on, including me, and I had to sort of make a big thing to make sure that my bit was not going to be in the film. You remember
Because
that?
everyone wanted their bit out of the film with these married people. I don't blame them. I don't want my bits in the film either, to be honest. Everyone wanted their bit out of the film until there was no film left. I said, Robbie, can't. There's no film left anymore, you know. Keith in compromising situations.
They would get all our calls and everything at the same time.
For the next 10 years or so, we had some of the most wonderful that I've ever had. Where times are, you know, we had great moments.
Ahmet and I used to do a lot of clubbing. We did perhaps more social life than we did actual business. We used to cram the business into very small niches.
They were very, very incidental.
That was the old-fashioned way of doing business.
Yeah.
Studio 54.
Ahmet came a lot to Studio 54. He came with a lot of people, with Mika and without Mika, but he, you know, was there and he was in the thick of it. Ahmet was able to mix with everybody. Highbrow, lowbrow, it really didn't matter. Ahmet could make a connection, you know, with anybody. There was a sexuality in the air and a spontaneity and a revelry and a kind of partying that was going on.
I guess so, yes. He was, but you know, it never, I mean, if it would have been very serious, it would have bothered me. But otherwise, I knew that it's passing, you know. I was tough with him, but, you know, I think it's unnatural to live your whole life with one person, frankly. I mean, it's very American. I mean, that is a thing which I think is not logical. Well, I wouldn't accept what they accept in France, you know, to have a permanent mistress or something like that. That I would find disturbing. But if you have, I mean, when you know that you count more in your husband's life than a thing like that, it's not important.
Let me ask you a question, okay? The sweet spot of Atlantic. There's a lot of women and drugs around, okay? Did you ever do any drugs?
Well, I inhaled.
It was fiesta, tropical moonlight. We met on the dance floor, and he held me so tight. I thought I was dying, but I just had the clap. It was fiesta, and I had the clap. What to do in Rio when you can't even pee on? I had a piss poor time, though it was fiesta. When he turned the light down low, he say, "Holy Toledo, honey, I want you so." I was forced to remove his head from my lap. You take care at fiesta. You beware at fiesta. Oh, there at fiesta, he will give you the...
I must tell you that I became a great aficionado of burlesque comedy.
Catchy, huh?
Now, my dear public, the next little trick that I offer is really hair-raising.
The gags were hilarious. It was a bit like commedia dell'arte. They had all these bald-headed men sitting there in their raincoats waiting for the girl to come up and strip. But I got more and more addicted to the comedy as I went to see these different girls.
When you went in for this sort of outrageous dress, was the idea to titillate or to
titillate? That sounds like your tits flew in a day too late.
In late 1972, I had the opportunity of hearing a young lady was making a lot of noise in a little club, and I was completely knocked out by Miss Bette Midler.
Ahmet saw me at a club in New York called the Upstairs to the Downstairs. We were working for a hairdresser's convention. There were 350 hairdressers in a room that seated 50 people. And at the end of the show, they all got up on the table and proceeded to do the Lindy. All 350 of them, all together. Ahmet Ertegun happened to walk in at the tail end of the Lindy. Didn't hear a note and signed me immediately.
It's a funny thing. You know, Mika rarely went with me to hear any groups, any artists. I used to say to Mika, we'd go to a dinner or something, and it'd be 11 o'clock, everybody go home. I said, well, look, I've got to go somewhere and hear a group downtown or something. So this time I said, I've got to go. I heard a fabulous singer. I've got to go hear her. She said, I'm going too, because she didn't believe that I was going.
She didn't believe. That's funny.
So she came, and she is so happy that she came, because that was an experience that I've never seen. I've never seen anybody. I mean, you did a great song. The first song you did that was there was terrific. I mean, I said, terrific, you know. But the reaction of the people, forget about it. I never saw. People were jumping up on the tables and everything. And when I saw that, I turned to Mika, I said, I don't know what she's got. I said, but whatever it is, we've got to have it. I've never seen anybody have this reaction.
When I went to make my first record, I went in with Barry Manilow and Joel Dorn, who really didn't get along very well. And I was kind of stuck between these two gigantic people. And I can't remember, I came to you crying, or maybe you came to me crying. Wait a minute, let me finish the story. And you said, this has to be a live record. This has to be a live record. So, and I remember very well that we had a party, and we invited a lot of people. We had some food, and we had a little bit of wine or something, and I sang the whole record live.
You made it.
Yeah, I made it.
My basic philosophy in making a record is I always start thinking about the end product and what effect that will have on a potential listener. So you really start with the effect that you're trying to produce.
In the end, I felt that you rescued me because I loved them both, but I couldn't really stand up to them. I didn't really feel that I had the strength of character to stand up to them.
Well, you shouldn't have to, you know.
Well, you shouldn't. But I'd never made a record before.
You're a star. You know, you're the singer. I mean,
well, but I'd never made a record. I was so frightened. I was like, "What's this?" And I was in the studio where all the
they were frightened of you.
All he wanted was to eat me. He only thought of me as food. All he wanted was to eat me. How rude.
When I used to come to see you, when you were on the road, and I'd be with some chick, you would just give me a dirty look.
I was such a Mika person. I was so Mika. I was in Mika's corner the whole way.
I know that.
Yeah, well. While Ahmet was on the road, Mika was cutting a road of her own, running a successful interior design company, Mac 2.
I wanted to have my own input, you know. It's very difficult to be married to a man like him and not do something. I wasn't like a pestering wife. What am I coming home? What are you doing? Where have you been? So that was perfect. I couldn't have children, so I just told him point blank before I got married. And he said, that's fine. I think if you have children, you have to dedicate yourself to them and forget a lot of our social life and a lot of the running around.
I think that if Mika and I had had children, we both have been so busy that they would have been brought up the way I was brought up, by nannies and governesses. I was very lucky that I had my mother's aunt who brought us all up, and she was an angel, and she was a wonderful woman, and she was my real parent. My mother and father were both too busy. I saw them every day for half an hour before dinner or something.
With houses in Southampton, New York City, Paris, and Turkey, Ahmet seemed to be in 12 places at once.
Ahmet really was gregarious. Even when he was slowed down now, we had to go to everything. You opened the door and there we were.
Atlantic in the 80s had become a very different place. It was a far cry from the one-room studio above Patsy's restaurant where Ahmet and his partners started a small, independent label. By 1975, Jerry Wexler had left Atlantic Records.
Part of it was my fault because I had defected to Miami. And I thought I could do the same thing by phoning it in, but it didn't work. Ahmet had seized the bit, and he was truly running the company on a daily basis. And somehow, I couldn't find my niche.
Ahmet found himself not exactly alone. He had rich and influential new partners. The indie record company he'd started was now part of a global music industry grossing over $5 billion, nearly twice that of the movie industry.
There are too many people running the record business today that if I say I need a note, they think, how much money do you want? What interest do you want to pay? They don't know a banknote from a note on a staff of music.
Because of his savoir-faire and upbringing, Ahmet was able to negotiate the corporate generals the way only a diplomat's son could. But he never lost his ear for talent.
Well, I can feel it coming in the air tonight. Oh, Lord. Well, I've been waiting for this moment for all my life. Oh, Lord.
I'd never really written a lot of songs. I'd written a few things with Genesis. Really, it was just arrangement skills. It was not writing. So this was the first time I'd really written stuff. I mean, it was in a room not unlike this. Like, we sat down and I put the cassette on and I just played you the stuff. Yeah. And you were much more motivated, it seemed, by that than had the Genesis album I just played you. And at the end of it, you said, I mean, this coming from you, as well as being a friend, you were also this person that I had grown up admiring and eventually got to know and eventually grew to love this person. And you were saying, you must make this record, and anything you can do to help me make it, you will do. And I went away from that meeting just feeling 10 feet tall, because obviously I was brand new.
I tell you, the most fun is when you sit at a studio and you suddenly hear magic happening. In other words, you hear a sound and you say, oh my gosh, this is something that the general public cannot deny. I got a copy of that record before it came out. I remember very well because I started to play that as an example of what a hit record sounds like to people who would bring me a record saying, listen to this record. And they play what they thought was a great record. I said, well, that's pretty good. Now listen to this record. And they would say, wow, what is that? Right? And it was, I said, that's a hit record. Oh, Lord.
It's only rock and roll. Tonight, musicians and performers from the world over, here for Atlantic Records' 40th anniversary.
The 80s danced to a very different beat from the jazz and R&B that had captivated Ahmet in the early years. Sustained by the success of veteran heavyweights and reissues onto CD, Atlantic was more than getting by. 1987 was a bad year. The stock market had crashed, and while Atlantic was celebrating its 40th anniversary, the record industry was being haunted by a problem long in the making. Ruth Brown, the first significant singer for Atlantic Records, had been asking for her fair share of royalties for over 20 years.
And I was working in a private home, and I heard my music being played on the air, and the announcer speaking and giving all these wonderful accolades to my contributions to the music. And all of a sudden I decided, well, that's all good and true, but where's the check?
She was not alone. Early rock and roll history was all hustle and hum. Payment of royalties was avoided like the plague. But with the advent of box sets and CDs, the royalty issue came to a head. Ahmet felt obliged to face the music. Although Atlantic was now owned by Warner Communications, he said, I'm still here, so I feel responsible. In 1988, Atlantic made reparations and reformulated their royalty structure. In addition, they donated $2 million to form the Rhythm and Blues Foundation for the support of veteran R&B artists.
To put the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Ahmet was fond of saying, the best way to predict the future is to make it.
3, 2, 1.
And make it he did. He helped create the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for many reasons, not the least of which was that half the people he loved most in the world could be in it.
There's not much to say about Aretha Franklin that you all don't know.
Clyde McFadden was not only an inspiration to me, but he was an inspiration to many, many great singers.
We never planned to write rock and roll. We were just trying to write good rhythm and blues.
We went about trying to create something really for the ages, you know, an actual institution that would truly honor the music and take its and have a very serious mission. That's one of our great accomplishments.
Everything emanated from his love of jazz. In 2004, Ahmet founded the Jazz Hall of Fame at Lincoln Center, which he dedicated to his brother Neswi.
Jazz at Lincoln Center was formed around Winton because it was Winton's concept not to let the traditional music of New Orleans die. And my friend here keeps it going.
Keep it going. Keep it going.
Yeah.
Keep it going. Keep it going.
And at 83, Ahmet keeps going too. He avoids the word elderly and says it's better to burn out than to fade away.
I think that I'm very lucky to have worked at what I loved, so it never seemed like work. And I would hate not to be able to go to the office of a record company every day. Boogie, boogie, roll. I think I wrote that song.
I feel so bad.
That's pretty hot for a live cut on the TV.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's my...
I never thought I would hear that song done again.
You
That's
better put a little
incredible.
bill in for the publishing there.
Oh, my God. We know what people are buying, and the taste changes, and we have to keep up with that. We hear a lot of things that are great talent for yesterday, but it's the great talent for tomorrow that counts.
Strong like a bison, I'm rough like brandy, and no one knows that I got more riffs than Randy Rose.
I just signed with Atlantic, and they booked me at some gig with all these Hollywood people. Would come, you know, one of those gigs where everybody doesn't care who's playing, and Ahmet stood in the front and watched me.
He was doing a show
party.
At a party, right?
You're the only one that watched me play.
I tell you. It wasn't a rock and roll show. It was a rock and roll experience.
Come on, y'all, and tell me what's my name.
And I tell you, the crowd witnessed something that they had never seen before.
A little louder.
He was doing everything: piano, drums, guitar, boom, boom, rapping, singing ballads. I just stood there, my mouth open. Well, this man is something else, and he is something else. And my first man, I said, "You're gonna be bigger than Elvis Presley. You are something else." And he was unknown then.
I like you too. Thank you.
I've been fueling up on cocaine and whiskey. Wish I had a good Swiss girl to miss me.
It's most interesting when you have a vision of an artist achieving a certain kind of musical climax on a record. It's a big payoff for people who love being involved in the creation of it. That's been my biggest driving force.
I can't look at you while I'm lying next to her.
He seems like one of the only people that really just loves music. Everybody else wants to, how are we gonna market this record and where are we gonna put it out and this, that, and the other. He's like, yeah, man, turn it up.
Hey, I put some new shoes on and suddenly everything's right. I said, hey, I put some new shoes on and everybody's smiling. That's so inviting.
He said to me, hey, kid, I love that shoe song. I love that shoe song. It's a hit. It's a hit, man. I met Ahmet, and from the glasses to the shoes that I met, he just looked great. He just looked so debonair, you know what I mean? Really sharp.
I don't need an excuse. So I'm wearing my brand new shoes.
I do like your shoes.
Thank you.
Very nice shoes.
I have about 100 pair of shoes. They're made in Paris by Loeb. A lot of missing.
Slowly, slowly, in the sweet sunshine, and I'm running late, and I don't need an excuse. So I'm wearing my brand new shoes. Yeah, yeah.
In July 2006, the Montreux Jazz Festival paid a tribute to Ahmet Ertegun by celebrating 60 years of Atlantic Records.
The last time I got an award, I was with Mika in Memphis, and I'd just gotten out of the hospital, and I was walking with 2 crutches, and they gave me a Lifetime Achievement Award for music, and I was walking up to the podium with my crutches. A Southern lady looked down to me. She says, "You must be mighty proud." I said, "Yes, ma'am, I am." She said, "You must be mighty proud because it's the first time we've given this award to a foreign cripple." So, as a foreign cripple, I would like to thank all of you and Claude for a great, great festival. Thank you.
This song I like to dedicate to Ahmet for making my career what it is today. I'm now near 50 years in this business because of you. You know I love you because you're my buddy and will always be.
Mr. Ahmet Ertegun made artists like myself dreams come true.
This is the man who signed our groove sheet to Atlantic Records. He gave us our start.
My years on Atlantic with you were the best years of my life. And thank you so much for those years. Just live it. I love it. Just live it. I love it. That's what. Just live it. Yes, I did. Just live it.
The soul of jazz is blues, and the soul of rhythm and blues is blues. So blues is really the fountainhead of all these kinds of music. You know, we make all these artificial distinctions. In my mind, it's really Black American music and the white imitation thereof.
Georgia, Georgia, the whole day through is just an old sweet song. Keeps Georgia on my mind. Oh, well, other arms reach out to me. Other eyes smile tenderly. Still in peaceful dreams I see. Oh, the road leads back to you. Leads back to you. Oh, Georgia. No, peace I'm fine. You say just this old sweet song. Georgia, on my mind.
The important thing, I think, is that when my brother and I were young kids and we first came to America, we were great jazz fans, and we loved American music, Black American music. At a time when Black singers and Black musicians were not generally helped by society in America. We tried and were able not only to help them, but to build something ourselves. A label which devoted a lot of its energy to jazz and blues and rock and roll.
That's what I'm talking about.
There is a point at which all this music comes together. The blues, the music of the 20s, 30s, and 40s, and 50s. The music that Louis Armstrong heard when he was growing up, and that enabled him to express so much feeling in his music. All of that was part of something that Nesri and I felt, and that somehow, against all odds, we were able to make something out of it, and I'm proud of that. But I'm most proud of the artists that helped us do that.
Keeps a judge on my mind.
Thank you, Ahmet. Congratulations, Ahmet. Thank you very much.
It ain't no party like an Ahmet party, 'cause an Ahmet party don't stop the party.
Ahmet Ertegun turned a small record label into a major record company. He superintended the careers of celebrated people and applied his own aesthetic to the talents of singers and musicians in a way that influenced the whole of the music.
Ahmet, we love you. Break it down one more time.
That he dies after falling backstage at a Rolling Stones concert is an ending too perfect for any self-respecting Hollywood screenwriter to have written. But that's the story, as only Ahmet could have told it.
This is a song that was written by Ahmet Ertegun all those years ago. You told me you loved, oh yeah. You told me you care.
What words on it?
I'll go with you, darling. Almost anywhere, my darling. Baby, you love, you love,
Mr. Ahmet Ertegun.
Don't play